pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. This meeting is convened in accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act of New Jersey. Let the official minutes reflect that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by publishing a notice in the Asbury Park Press on Friday, January 8th, 2021, the Press of Atlantic City, and the Star Ledger, and also forwarded to the Toms River Times, Toms River Patch, and WOBM News on Wednesday, January 6th, 2021, and thereafter posting same on the Town Hall Bulletin Board for such notices, and filing same with the Township Clerk pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Township Council on Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. The meeting dates have also been posted on the Township webpage. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Hurick.
Here.
Councilman Kopp.
Here.
Councilman Latano.
Here.
Councilman Roderick.
Here.
Councilman Turnbach.
Here.
Council Vice President Maruka.
Present.
Council President Gagan.
Here.
All right, the first item of business will be the minutes of June 22nd, 2021.
Council, your pleasure.
Move the minutes. Second.
Minutes were moved by Councilwoman Hurick, seconded by Councilwoman Maruka. Councilwoman Hurick.
Yes.
Councilwoman Maruka, I'm sorry, Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Yes.
Councilman Latano.
Yes.
Councilman Roderick.
Yes.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes.
Council President Gagan.
Yes.
Next is our honoring resolutions and presentations, and tonight council will be recognizing the life-saving efforts.
Move the honoring resolutions?
Second.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Motion made by Councilwoman, Vice President Maruka, seconded by Councilman Turnbach. Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurick.
Yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Yes.
Councilman Latano.
Yes.
Councilman Roderick.
Yes.
And Council President Gagan.
Yes. Council, if you will.
Someone's stuck in the chair. Looks like they spit up. Feel free to try to go first.
Okay, prior to reading our next ordinance, number 7, on the agenda, I'm going to have our attorney, Mr. Merlino, give a brief presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Assistant Township Attorney Anthony Merlino. The mayor and council have asked me to appear tonight to provide an updated presentation on the consent order entered on March 11th by the United States District.
Excuse me, Mr. Merlino, let me get you a mic just so it's a little bit clearer. Although we can hear you okay, I'm not sure if...
Take the one from the front.
Yeah, just from the front. Thank you, sir.
I'll start over. The mayor and council have asked me to appear tonight to provide an updated presentation on the consent order entered on March 11th by the United States District Court for the District of New Jersey. This order resolves the 2-year dispute between the township and the United States Department of Justice concerning the township zoning regulations pertaining to religious assemblies. The consent order mandates certain amendments to those zoning regulations to bring them into compliance with the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, otherwise known as RLUPA. Listed for final adoption on tonight's agenda is an ordinance implementing those amendments. Essentially, these zoning changes restore the standards that prevailed in the township for decades prior to 2017. And ultimately, the consent order keeps the township out of lengthy and costly litigation with the federal government and accommodates religious assemblies in conformity with federal law while still advancing important township priorities. The purpose of this presentation is to clear up any lingering myths, misinformation, or misconceptions about the requirements and effects of the consent order. I would also like to reintroduce our special counsel, Professor Marcy A. Hamilton, who has guided the township throughout this process. Professor Hamilton is the Fels Institute of Government Professor of Practice and a resident senior fellow in the Program for Research on Religion at the University of Pennsylvania. Before moving to Penn, she held the Paul R. Verkuhl Chair in Public Law at Benjamin N. Cardoso School of Law. She clerked for former United States Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor and has litigated successfully before the United States Supreme Court and the federal courts of appeal. She is one of the nation's leading experts on RLUPA, the federal statute at the center of this matter. So I'll bring your attention to the slides. It's a short presentation to separate some of the fact from the fiction surrounding the consent order. So first fiction, the township was under no threat of litigation. Fact is, on September 17th, 2020, the Department of Justice issued a notice of suit, which was basically an ultimatum. Litigation was to commence within 12 days unless the township entered into negotiations. When the Department of Justice issues a letter like that, they are not bluffing. In addition to that, on February 17th and February 23rd, 2021, 2 federal lawsuits were filed by private plaintiffs asserting the same claims under RLUPA. And on March 11th, 2021, a federal action was opened by the Department of Justice, and the consent order was entered by the Federal District Court. This is the letter issued by the Department of Justice on September 17th. This has been published on our website and in the media, and the operative language is right there. This letter is to inform you that we have completed our investigation and that the Assistant Attorney General has authorized the filing of a complaint in Federal District Court. DOJ will consider deferring the filing of the lawsuit for a short period if the township is willing to enter into pre-suit negotiations to resolve this matter, which is what the township did. These are the 2 summonses issued in the 2 federal district cases that are currently pending by private litigants. And this is the first page of the consent order entered by the United States District Court based on the action opened by the Department of Justice. So litigation was real. And it was impending. Fiction number 2, the cost of litigation would have been minimal. Fact, in New Jersey, our RLUPA settlements and judgments have ranged from $400,000 to over $7.75 million in municipalities smaller than Tom's River. The township was facing a triple threat, not only from the DOJ, but as I said, also the 2 private lawsuits that are currently pending. Our experts, including Professor Hamilton, concluded that the fines, penalties, judgments, and attorney's fees combined in these three cases would have exceeded $10 million. And there's also a non-monetary cost. Litigation would have, or unsuccessful litigation, would have ceded control over our zoning to the federal government or the federal courts. Fiction number 3, why worry? Insurance will cover it. Fact, insurance coverage is not automatic. The township received no guarantee of coverage from its insurer. Insurance policies also have limits, and only a small percentage of any judgment would have been covered, if at all. And insurance does not cover the non-monetary costs, which is the loss of control over local zoning. And here's the letter from the insurer, and you can see in the red box, in big letters, denial of coverage. Fiction number 4, the case was defensible if not winnable. Fact, there's no evidence supporting a minimum 10-acre zoning for religious places of assembly. A breakdown of the current religious houses of worship in town break down 75% are under 10 acres, only 25% are 10 acres or more, and of that 25%, 2 are outliers because they're in the 20-acre range. There's no compelling justification for a jump from 2 to 10 acres in 2017. Again, Professor Hamilton has advised us that the 10-acre minimum is unprecedented nationally and also locally. Our 2 neighboring towns that are close to Toms River size both have 2-acre minimums. It is also a break with 40 years of history. The 2-acre minimum had prevailed from 1979 to 2017. And the 10-acre minimum was burdensome, discriminatory, and exclusionary because under that standard, houses of worship were subject to the most restrictive zoning standards in comparison to secular places of assembly, which is a violation of our LUPA. And this is a chart that I prepared that maps out around 30 houses of worship. There may be a few that I've missed in putting this together. It's unscientific, but it does show you that our houses of worship range from 2 to 20. And of those 30, 22 are under 10, only 8 are 10 or more. And as you can see, the 2 at the bottom are outliers at 20.2 or 26.19 acres. Fiction number 5, houses of worship are now permitted in residential zones. Fact, houses of worship can only locate in residential zones on state and county roadways subject to certain conditions. Those conditions include a 2-acre minimum lot size, proper roadway frontage, meaning on a state or county roadway defined in, and those roadways have technical definitions in our master plan, depending on lot size. And they must also comply with parking, buffers, landscaping, lot coverage, and other requirements. And these standards, while we're specifically discussing houses of worship here, would apply across the board to any comparable place of assembly, secular or religious. Fiction number 6, houses of worship can locate on residential streets. Fact, residential streets are exclusively off limits for all places of assembly, religious and non-religious. And below is a snapshot of the map that we have published on our website that shows you the red areas that include places where houses of worship cannot locate. Many of those areas, in fact most of them, are areas where you have residential streets. Fiction number 7, the consent order completely overhauls township zoning. Fact, this is a reversion back to the pre-2017 zoning regulations. 2-acre minimum lot size was in place from 1979 to 2017. Minor collector roadways were permissible locations for houses of worship from 1991 to 2017, and houses of worship have been conditionally permitted in the rural residential R800 and R400 zones for 30 years up until 2009. So the regulations that we are implementing pursuant to the consent order are consistent with 30 to 40 years of precedent. Fiction number 8, under the consent order, religious places of assembly will get special treatment. Fact, under the revised zoning, comparable religious and secular places of assembly are subject to the same standards. Religious places of assembly go back to the standards that govern them in 2017. And if you take the time frame and look at the Statistics, no significant increase in new religious assemblies under the prior standards. Our total tax roll is about 43,000 parcels. Of those, about 47 are religiously exempt. In the 15 years from 2006 to 2021, and most of that time period includes the pre-2017 standards, 8 religiously exempt properties were added, and they span denominations: 3 Christian, 3 Jewish, and 2 Hindu. Fiction number 9, the township caved to the federal government. Fact, this is a rewind, not a redo. The township drew the line with the pre-2017 zoning standards. In return, or as part of this order, the township got back important neighborhood protections, and that includes the limitation on residential streets, limiting the size of houses of worship and other places of assembly on the minor collector roadways to a maximum of 2.5 acres, and a complete exclusion for Main Street, Shenandoah Boulevard, and Indian Hill Road. Fiction number 10, the township made a bad deal. Well, I'll let you compare. Litigation would have resulted in millions in judgments, zoning controlled by the federal courts, no restrictions on assemblies, secular or religious, and costly continued litigation with private plaintiffs. As a result of the settlement that's implemented pursuant to the consent order, it is zero cost to the taxpayers. We retain control over our zoning. We have reasonable conditions and protections for residential streets and neighborhoods, and overall makes us less susceptible to future litigation. I'd like to supplement what I've had to say.
Be very hard to add to that except to say the following. Everyone knows I'm no fan of the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. Our LUPA is an unfortunate law, but it is federal law, and it is enforced by the Department of Justice. So once the Department of Justice entered into the Toms River scenario, there was no question that we had to think very carefully about what to do. I think the result here is fair. I think it's fair to all sides. And I think it is unfortunate that sometimes politics enters this arena. This is just law, as unexciting as that is. And the law says that a jump from 2 to 10 acres, all of a sudden in 2017, without any justification that would ever persuade a federal court, was likely going to cost Toms River tens of millions of dollars. So I want to congratulate Anthony. He has done a stupendous job on this. I'm sure he's giving me too much credit. But also your council and your mayor have led you down the right path. You've avoided a horrific set of circumstances. And let me just close by saying this. What happens in communities that don't get these disputes under control is that they divide up. They start calling each other names. It's not worth it. Better to be welcoming in the way in which Toms River has laid this out than to end up being enemies within your own community. So, in my view, this was about as good as a result we could have gotten.
Okay. Does any member of the council have any questions for
I have a
the
question.
attorney? Yes.
Anthony, you said that we have 2 neighboring towns that are within the 2 acres, that have 2 acre zoning. Which towns would they be?
Jackson and Brick.
Jackson and Brick? Thank you.
Okay. Councilman McDowell.
I have a question for Ms. Hamilton, please. You do this all over the state or area, East Coast? Country, the country. Okay. So you've seen lots of towns that have issues similar to these?
Lots.
So in all of your experience, how did Toms River compare as far as if we went to court, and how did we compare for the deal that we worked out?
Well, I count Toms River as one of the cases that I count as a big success, along with the township of Abington outside of Philadelphia and about 4 or 5 communities in California. It's not easy to navigate this, but Toms River, in my view, gets an A. You stuck to it. You didn't do anything rashly. But the end result is defensible, and that's why the DOJ agreed to it.
Right. So, in your opinion, for seeing some towns that maybe didn't do the same thing, what kind of payout would Toms River have expected to pay?
Well, the problem is that the jump in the law from 2 to 10 is created this argument for discrimination. And what the federal courts are saying in New Jersey is that the discrimination is anti-Semitic. And it would have been, in my view, at least $10 million of a fine. But that's after litigation. Right? So what our LUPA does is that not only would you have to pay your attorneys, but you have to pay their attorneys. And in fact, you have to pay their attorneys even if you want to settle, if you let it go on too long. And so Toms River cut this off before it became ridiculously expensive. And they also cut it off so that you don't have to deal with it again. This is a good set of principles on the books, defensible again and again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members have any questions? Does any member of the public have any questions? Yes, ma'am. If you would step up to the mic and just state your name and address for the record, please.
Michelle Williams, 111 Tiller Drive. I was just wondering if the PowerPoint would be listed on the municipal website.
Sure, I'll have it
Sure.
posted tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, sir. If you would just step up to the mic here at the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
Marvin Ledbeater, 1608 Outer Drive, Toms River. I have a question. So now nobody can go back and say we want to make it 1 acre.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's done?
It's done.
We're at 2 acres? Okay. What's the difference between a religious school and a house of worship?
For
For zoning and stuff like that?
For purposes of our LUPA, they're the same,
Okay.
because they're both religious uses, but for purposes of zoning, they're not necessarily the same.
Okay, so why was I told by a handful of my neighbors that 726 Woodchuck is going to be a religious school in a residential area of 1 acre houses? Could maybe somebody answer me that? Look at that?
I don't know, but we can certainly have our staff look into that. 726
Woodchuck.
Woodchuck.
Now, everybody knows on the block, but nobody knows here. So I don't know where all these people are finding out the information. But then it shouldn't be if it's
Agreed.
It's the same thing as you're saying, so it shouldn't be a religious school
Well,
on 1 acre.
they can certainly apply,
Right.
but Toms River is required to apply their law neutrally to everyone in the same way.
Right.
So this set of rules will apply to every future applicant.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I
Thank
have
you,
a
sir.
question.
Yes, Mr. Roderick.
Are variances, can people still request variances? And if those variances are not granted, can someone still sue?
The ordinary land use process has been untouched. So to the extent that it's legitimate to ask for a variance, yes.
And if a,
If they don't get what they seek, can they sue? Yes. Has Toms River set itself up to be lawsuit-proof? Pretty much.
Okay. I think, Mr. Anderson, if you would step up. Mike, please. Yes. Go ahead here. Name and address for the record, please.
Art Anderson, 12 Park Street. One of my questions is, the 2 acres, that from 10 acres, that's Toms River, right? Not Lupa? Does Lupa have a rule?
No, no.
So they don't have a rule at the acreage at all?
Well, I mean, if you look at the averages across all communities are compared across the board. And as Anthony mentioned, you've got 2 neighboring communities with 2 acres. The problem is that Toms River had 2 acres for so long. And so it was the steep jump from 2 to 10 in 2017 that got the Fed's attention.
So,
That's really the
so
problem.
some towns might have like 2.5, 3 acres with no problem with Lupa.
If they have a long history of having that level, possibly.
Okay. And what was the reason for settling at 2 acres? Was there a reason?
That's where they were
For-
before they left up to 10.
Okay.
And as you saw on the acreages, the vast majority of the community houses of worship are at 2 acres.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member of the public have any questions? Sir, step up to the mic, state your name and address.
Back to where it belongs.
That's fine for now.
Richard Chulo, 215 Grant Avenue, Seaside Heights. First of all, Mr. Merlino, you just did a perfect presentation to dispel the myths that have been floating around over the course of the last couple of months. Marcy, I don't know how to even begin to say thank you. As soon as I leave this meeting, I'm heading up to Jackson Township, where I'm going to have a completely different conversation with their council, having already now been hit with a preliminary injunction by a federal judge that is likely going to one day seize control of the local zoning away from them and place it in the hands of either a district court or a federal judge. That terrifies me, and it should terrify all of you. Tonight, as you cast your votes, I know this is probably an unusual request, but I'm going to make it anyway. I think it's important that everybody at this dais state on the record how you're going to vote, and then provide just a brief explanation as to why you're voting the way you are. I think Mrs. Hamilton has explained in no uncertain terms, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was a 100% chance Toms River would have lost this. Would you concur with that?
They were in trouble.
Not 99.8%, 100% chance.
I'm going to lose, but
And God forbid. But the truth is that this was a losing battle, and you made what I think is arguably a very fair and reasonable deal. To address Mr. Roderick's comments, and I think Marcy kind of touched on it, ultimately everybody will always reserve the right to still make an appearance before the zoning board, and the zoning board will give due consideration to the appeal that's before it. They'll make a determination, and if the applicant is not pleased with the outcome, they'll still reserve the right to pursue litigation in either state or federal court. That's never going to change. That's the law of the state. That's the law of our land. This threatened litigation, and ultimately litigation, was about a specific ordinance in our town. It didn't touch anything else. So going to your point, I'm aware of somebody who will very likely make an application to the zoning board over the course of the next few weeks to put a house of worship on a piece of property that's slightly over 1 acre of land in the middle of a development of homes on a residential street. Zoning board's got a decision to make with that one. But this consent decree addressed the Department of Justice's concerns. Now, we have concerns at the zoning board level as to whether or not that's going to be an appeal that will be granted. And where it goes from there, Dan, it's anybody's guess, most likely to court. But this was never intended to address that. This was intended to address a specific ordinance that was on the books that the Department of Justice made it abundantly clear was not acceptable. So, again, I'm going to renew my request. If you could just give a quick blurb as to why you're voting the way that you are, I, for one, would appreciate it.
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunately, we can't do that till we vote, but that'll be coming up very soon. Does any other member of the public have any questions? Any other questions from the council?
Seeing none, move to close the public comment.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to read the title of the ordinance into the record. So, 7 is an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Toms River, Ocean County, New Jersey, amending and supplementing various sections of Chapter 348, Land Use and Development Regulations of the Township Code in accordance with the consent order entered in United States of America versus Township of Toms River, Civil Action Number 3:21-CV-04633. This is a final reading.
Move the ordinance on final.
Second?
Motion was made by Council Vice President Maruka and second by Councilwoman Hurick. Council Vice President Maruka.
This process has been a long process. It has been a process where we've had to take a look at every aspect of this. We've been under the guidance of Marcy, and she has been great guidance for us, and also with Anthony. And we didn't take this decision lightly. We didn't take this decision lightly to enter a settlement agreement. A lot of times it's easy just to say no and live with the consequences. But this is something that we sat down, we discussed, we debated, and we come up with the best possible solution for the residents of this town. A lot of times, the popular decision isn't right, but a lot of times, also, the right decision isn't popular. And there's some residents that might agree, and there's going to be some residents that don't agree. But this is the best settlement that this council and administration could have negotiated for the residents of this municipality, and that's what we were elected to do. And I vote yes.
Councilwoman Hurek.
I echo what Councilwoman Maruka stated, and I also feel that the advice that we received from our experts, our attorney, Anthony Merlino, and Marcy Hamilton, provided us with enough background and information that we were able to look at the consent order that was suggested by the Department of Justice. We were able to negotiate. We didn't just read it and say, okay, we'll just go with that. We actually negotiated. We drew some lines, we dotted I's and crossed T's, and had some concessions from the DOJ. It wasn't just whatever they say, but it was close to whatever they say because they are the United States Department of Justice and they do have the RLUIPA law to work with, and we have to work within that. I think this is the right thing to do. I think it's the smart thing to do. I said a long time ago that if we lose control of our zoning ordinances, if it's handed over to a court or, if it's suspended while the case is pending, we'd have nothing to stand on. There would be no limitations. So I think this is the right thing to do, and I vote yes.
Councilman Cobb.
During these negotiations, they're not easy. You have a lot of facts thrown at you. A lot of decisions need to be made. One thing that we did was we decided to bring some of the smartest minds together. And I would like to thank Marcy Hamilton being one of those smartest minds. She gave us guidance. We took every decision very, very with full thought. We looked at and listened to the residents of Toms River and understood the concerns that they have. We also understood the concerns of the DOJ. The DOJ came to us and said, we have a problem, and Toms River came up with a solution. I think the solution protects Toms River. It fits the needs of the DOJ, and it also protects the future of Toms River, which is something that I cherish. And that being said, I vote yes.
Councilman Latano.
Thank you. So no one on the council, none of the attorneys or experts that we have spoken to on our numerous back and forth negotiations with the Department of Justice, no one has offered up an alternative solution that didn't end up in litigation and it didn't end up with the possibility of millions of dollars in fees and fines, plus possible loss of control. This was the solution that was put forth by the experts, and we are taking their advice. We came up with a solution that is not affecting the quality of life of our citizens, and I think that you have to listen to the experts, and I vote yes.
Councilman Roderick.
Before I vote, I'd like to read part of a letter written by Mayor Hill and sent to the residents of Toms River back in October of 2019. At that time, Mayor Hill and council members Gagan, Kopp, and Latano were running for office. And it had come out that Mayor Hill had a reduction in the acreage requirement to 2 acres on his land use committee agenda. That was long before any of this occurred. So I'll read from you the letter. I have copies of the letter for anyone in the audience that would like it. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but just part. Let me be clear. I am absolutely opposed to 2-acre zoning for houses of worship in Toms River. If the U.S. Justice Department demands that we implement such zoning, I will fight them in court. The allegations to the contrary in the anonymous letter sent out is absolutely false. The anonymous letter is part of a vicious attack which I expect will continue through Election Day. Mayor Hill continues on to state, let me state unequivocally, I have not and would never sell out Toms River to any special interest. Now, again, this is Mayor Hill's letter, and it's clear now that Mayor Hill was less than truthful, that he lied to the residents of Toms River when he sent that letter out. No such fight ever occurred. And as you heard, while this may reduce the likelihood of being sued, it certainly doesn't stop lawsuits in the future. As a resident asked, if that were denied, yes, the person could appeal and could take it to court. And frankly, I feel that there are more properties in the 2-acre size, or just shy of 2 acres, than there are in the 10-acre size. So it's safe to say that there will be more lawsuits, more folks making applications before the zoning board for variances, not less. So I disagree and respectfully vote no.
Councilman Turnbach.
No offense to Councilman Roderick, but we have an expert in Professor Hamilton that has argued Arlupa across the entire United States. She's published on Arlupa. She's the preeminent, foremost expert in the country. We have Anthony Merlino, who will never tell you that he graduated Seton Hall Law in 2002, and he graduated #1 in his class, and I was in his class. And he clerked for the New Jersey Supreme Court. So we can either listen to Councilman Roderick and his opinion, or we can listen to the experts. Imagine, Toms River, if we don't listen to the experts. You saw the presentation. There was a denial of coverage from our insurance. Go back to your insurance carrier and say, we've hired an expert, but guess what? We're not going to listen to that expert. We know she travels all across the United States, and she knows what she's talking about. That's why we hired her. She's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. But we're not going to listen to her insurance. We're going to listen to Councilman Roderick. And who's going to pay when we lose? Everyone sitting in this audience, everyone hopefully listening online tonight. Important. Consider what Professor Hamilton said. Look what's going on in Jackson. They're not united right now, they're divided. And she's absolutely right. We're working to unite our community. This is a step in the right direction. I could never sit here in good faith and vote no and expose all of you to tens of millions of dollars that no insurance company is ever going to cover. Mr. Chulo is right. Anyone can file a lawsuit. That's the laws of the United States. Guess what? You have your rights. We can't take those rights away. So the idea of there's going to be more litigation, if there's litigation, we've done our best to protect our residents. We've set a standard that's been in place for 40 years. In 2017, this was the standard, Toms River. 2017. This isn't something that we are reducing, that you've had 10 acres since 1979. Quite the contrary. You have to pay attention to the facts. You cannot buy into the fiction. The fiction is designed to promote fear and untruths. I vote yes.
Council President Gagan.
Yes, when I decided to seek elected office, I too, probably looked at Facebook way too much and realized, oh my God, that this is an outrage. Once elected and going to different meetings and with the attorneys, you hear the facts. The facts. Not the Facebook facts, but facts. This was in play for 40-plus years prior. Certainly it didn't sit well with us, but when we realized the truth and how it had been this way for 40-some-odd years, and listening to our experts, again, experts in the field, the decision became pretty clear what had to be done for the community, for the town, what's best for everybody. Lawsuits, they're a dime a dozen. It's the way of our land. A number of years ago, decades ago, I used to own 7-Eleven stores. I was sued once because somebody had the winning lottery number, but they noticed it the day after the drawing and sued. I mean, think of the craziness of that. Again, it's our system. We don't have to agree with it, but it's the way it is. Just because we have insurance, an analogy, you know, I have insurance on my car. I'm not going to go recklessly running through, you know, red traffic lights and stop signs and hope the insurance pays. When you hear from the experts, we're going to lose 10 out of 10 times in front of 10 different judges, 10 different ways to Sunday. What's the option? You know, do we recklessly spend everybody's money and maybe hope for the best? I haven't heard any other plan to try to do that other than, just fight it, wing it. It's the best decision. It's a tough decision for us, but as Councilwoman Maruk had said, sometimes a popular thing is not always right, and the right thing is not always popular. I vote yes.
Thank you. Okay, 8 is an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Toms River, Ocean County, New Jersey, amending the redevelopment plan for the Phase 1 downtown waterfront redevelopment area, final reading.
Yes. I'd like to ask Mr. Roberts to come up and just give a brief explanation on this. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Council. This is the 1917 Phase 1 Waterfront Redevelopment Plan. It was adopted originally on December 26th of 2017. What this ended up being is basically an update cover to cover. It was precipitated by the discovery that one lot was overlooked and missing from the plan in Block 569, which is the block that once included the Red Carpet Inn. It's the block bounded by Iron Street, Herflicker, and Water, and it's the site of one of the first redevelopment project proposals that the township has had. Obviously, we can't leave the lot out. So in order to add the lot, we had to amend the plan. I had been keeping notes in terms of things that we've determined things need to be updated as we've gone along. This was an opportunity to effectively update it from cover to cover. And I'll just give you a couple brief examples of some of those things. First of all, the original redevelopment plan, even though it showed the bus terminal as being part of the redevelopment, and just to take a step back, the actual redevelopment area includes the entire area from basically Water Street to the river. It's divided in half by the right-of-way of Herflicker Boulevard. So half of the area is between Herflicker and Water, and the other half of the area is between Herflicker and the river. The Phase 1 plan was intended and was originally proposed by the bid in 2011 to cover that area between Herflicker and Water. However, the terminal is on the other side of Herflicker. As the plan was developed, the Land Use Committee at the time, in 2006 and 2017, felt that it was important to include the bus terminal in the plan. However, if you look at the table, the block and lot for the bus terminal is not listed in the table. So technically, the plan can't apply to a property that it doesn't identify. So we included not just the bus terminal, but the Conrail right-of-way, which is where the Barnegat Branch Trail will be someday in the future, that would lead to the bus terminal, and a number of other properties that, for example, the parking lot on the other side of Herflicker, which is lot 11.02, which is used as a surface parking lot. It's not listed. It was not listed originally in the Phase 1 plan. So that was the first update. The second update was block 658.01, which is the block bounded by Main, Irons, and Water Street, and it includes basically I would say the west side of Main Street, the first block of Main Street, the west side. It includes the Wells Fargo building, is probably the most well-known building on that block. It includes the 7-Eleven and some others. It was recommended for inclusion in the redevelopment area in 2012. We discovered after we adopted the plan, when we retained redevelopment council, which was like one of the next steps in implementing the plan, and they asked for copies of the resolution of designation, that evidently that resolution had never been through the process. It probably went to the planning board, but there was no record that was ever adopted by the governing body, which means it was never designated. And we think that is because of Sandy. That was right about the time of Sandy. With Sandy, everything basically was pushed aside, and the township focused on recovering from Sandy, and that resolution was never adopted. So that area, which was included in this plan, isn't actually in the redevelopment area. So we had to update all the language in the plan that references that block. However, we didn't want to take out one of the key recommendations of the plan at the time, which was to try to create a connection of Washington Street all the way to Iron Street through that block. That would require one of the 3 buildings that makes up the Wells Fargo complex to be removed. The owner of the Wells Fargo building also owns the parking lot on the other side of Iron Street, which is in the redevelopment area, and most likely would be one of the next projects to come through the pipeline. We wanted to keep that idea alive. So I didn't take that out of the plan, but I made corrections to reference the fact that that block would most likely have to be added to the downtown core rehab area as opposed to being in the redevelopment area. So that was update number 2. The third update is, if you remember, in 2018, we adopted downtown core redevelopment plan, which covers the area on the other side of Main Street. It's the historic village part of the downtown, which includes this area that we're sitting in tonight. About a year or so later, we updated that plan to add the Robbins Parkway redevelopment area, which was the Boatworks building and the parking lot. And at that time, we also had established an arts council, basically the CAP, Community Arts Project. That was considered to be the official arts council, if you will, of the township. They recommended a arts and culture district within the downtown. Part of the district was in the downtown core, part of the district was in the Phase 1 redevelopment area, specifically Block 569. So that plan was then updated to include not only the map, so that both plans have the same map, but also the same language in terms of encouraging arts and cultural amenities as part of redevelopment projects that are within that sub-district, if you will, of those 2 redevelopment areas. The last, there's the only change we made to the development standards was that we recognized in a couple of instances, now that we've had some investment in the downtown over the past 4 years since that plan was adopted, that the plan called for 80% coverage in the table. We have many properties in the downtown that are already at 100% coverage, and they've been at 100% coverage for 120 years. So that would cause a problem for any existing properties looking to rehabilitate or redevelop. So I added existing or 80%. And the 80% came from the fact that the CAFRA maximum standard in a center, which the downtown is, it's a regional center under the state development and redevelopment plan, is 80%. However, CAFRA grandfathers in existing development that's over 80% coverage. So we didn't want to penalize our existing development that was already at more than 80%, so we added that language to make it clear. And then the last final update was that we added the proposed downtown loop, was what it's been commonly known as, based on a traffic study from 2015, which recommended that Water Street be a one-way outbound to the Parkway, Herflicker be reconstructed as a one-way eastbound from the Parkway. When we got the build grant in 2018, and then have been consummating it ever since. The local concept development phase that the county did last year found a critical flaw in the loop. And the critical flaw had to do with the stop sign at South Main and Herflicker. Actually, as you come around on Dover Street or South Main to Atlantic City Boulevard, that would be a critical backup at that location. So we had to scrap the actual one-way and switch to a two-way loop. So basically that Water Street and Herflicker Boulevard would be two-way each, reconstructed, and they also recommended a roundabout at exit 81. So that's basically the plan now that we're now trying to advance to the next stage with the build grant. That had to be updated as well. So those are, when I say cover to cover, that was basically the extent of the changes. The version of the plan I think the council may have seen has the cross-outs and underlines, so you can kind of see where those changes are for yourselves. But effectively, what I would reference this is as a housekeeping update to the redevelopment plan that you originally adopted in 2017. That's, Mr. Council President, I think that would be
I think you covered everything.
That's kind of crib notes.
I have three questions.
Go ahead, Councilman.
First, I was wondering if you could tell folks in the audience what are the benefits of being in an area designated in need of redevelopment for a property owner?
For a property owner in the area?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's, basically, the main purpose of doing it is to give the governing body control over future redevelopment. It also provides tools under the statute that aren't available in any other program. For property owners, it allows for, in some cases, some additional uses. For example, most of the Phase 1 area, if not all of the Phase 1 area, was in a village business zone. Most of the properties that are currently there were left over they've been there for many years. A lot of them were commercial uses that may not even be permitted in the village business zone. But be that as it may, if they wanted to develop or redevelop their property in accordance with the plan, they would have the benefits of what the redevelopment statute provides in terms of incentive.
Would tax incentives be part of that?
Only if it's justified. Effectively, the main issue here is that there are uses promoted in this redevelopment plan, and there are densities allowed in this redevelopment plan that would exceed what's in the underlying zoning.
That actually brings me to my second question. So if you could exceed the densities, does that increase the value of the property being brought into the area in need?
Potentially, as long as you comply with the plan. So
it would increase the value?
Right, but the plan requires givebacks to the community in terms of public amenities, things like parks and other things that are part of that deal. So effectively, it's in a way a version of contract zoning, if you want to call it that, because a redevelopment project under this plan would require a redevelopment agreement with the governing body having full control over the results of that agreement.
And then my last question is, the pictures on the front here of the redevelopment plan, those are apartments, correct?
Well, I'm actually, you're talking about on the front cover?
Yeah, it's hard because it's small once you print it and it's black and white, but I've seen that before. I've seen that picture before.
Yeah, these are representations of the proposed concept from our first redevelopment project. They've been on the website since probably November or December of last year. So that's a representative of one project, artist rendering of one project. That is the first project that the township is considering.
Considering, right. Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
You're welcome.
Does any other member of the public have any questions? Mr. Anderson.
Art Anderson, 12 Park Street. I'm a little confused on it. Is this actually a contract then with the developer?
No.
It's a redevelopment plan, but the redevelopment plan is required under the statute before any agreement, which is the same thing as a contract, can be executed. So the plan has to be there in place first.
Because it's very specific, sorry about that, about the how high it can be, 8 stories or 12 stories, but it doesn't really say how we can make it 12 stories, right?
No, I think it's very specific. I would disagree. And that has not changed since the plan was adopted in 2017. The plan set the maximum height at 8 stories. It allowed for a bonus of height and density to be negotiated with the governing body in return for in return for givebacks. In other words, you have to earn your bonus. And there's a whole list of potential amenities that would be provided to the public that you would have to provide in order to gain that bonus.
So who decides on how high we can make it and the parking, how much parking there is?
Ultimately, the redevelopment agreement indicates that, and then you also have the additional level of site plan review by the planning board. The redevelopment plan also provided for ranges of height. The original idea was not to have a monolithic development of buildings of all the same height. So we were trying to say we put caps on buildings over a certain height, and one thing that we do require is a minimum of 2 stories, because with the whole idea of redevelopment is you're trying to incentivize investment, and you don't want to get marginal development when you can get more substantial development. So there's a minimum, which you don't see in normal zoning, minimum of 2 stories, and then the max is based on either the given as of right cap and then the bonus cap. And that hasn't changed.
So if you guys vote on this tonight, we can go up to 12 stories, or only 1.4 spots. Is that correct?
No.
No.
The redevelopment plan as it stands before, even if it was not amended, already provided for that since 2017.
All right, thank you. Any other member of the public have any questions?
I just have a question for Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Just to be clear, and on the attachment that Councilman Roderick is referencing is the picture of the plan submitted by Capadaglia, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
That's not what we're voting on tonight.
No, that's a RS rendering of one potential project for one potential site.
But that is not up for a vote
That
tonight.
is correct.
That's not what this ordinance is
That's
about.
not, this is just the redevelopment plan. It doesn't approve a project. That's only done through the redevelopment agreement.
Which has not been decided.
That is correct.
I have one follow-up question just to address Mr. Turnbach. We were told not too many weeks ago that there was no plan for apartments, and now Mr. Turnbach just said that there was a plan submitted by Mr. Capadaglia. So again, I just want to point that out to the public, that there is a plan in place, and Mr. Turnbach just acknowledged that, so.
Council President, I believe there was a concept plan submitted. There is no plan in place, it's just a concept of what they brought to the governing body, correct?
Yeah, there's been concept plans that have been reviewed by the Land Use Committee, by the Mayor's Advisory Committee on Redevelopment for the past year.
Okay.
Or more. This project has been developing since 2019.
Can I just, we've actually had our professionals, independent professionals, look at those plans, and we've asked for revisions, right? We haven't
Several
agreed
times.
on anything.
Right. The plans have been modified multiple times since 2019.
Any other questions for Mr. Roberts? Yes, ma'am. If you would, just step up to the mic, state your name and address for the record, please.
Dana Tremolin, 105 Messenger Street, Toms River. I live on Messenger Street for 40-plus years now. Listening to this, it is a very scary thought that downtown, after they just redid the roads, it's still a mess, and now you want to bring in more traffic to an area that can't handle the traffic that it has when we have buildings that still need to be fixed up, such as the Food Town building and the bank down there. Why can't we work with what we have to fix before we bring in more mess, if you will? We have empty buildings. Those apartments on Main Street, they took forever to fill. And now you want to build however many more apartments down there, and it's not going to work. I've watched this for 40 years. It's a mess. And to do that, it aggravates me to even think about it when we're trying to revitalize downtown, not overstuff it. Let's fix the problems first before we start building anything more at this point. It's too much. It's too much.
The only thing I would indicate is that, well, first of all, I would disagree, that's too much. But the other thing is that when you plan, you have, we were well aware of the circulation concerns. That's one of the reasons why the original redevelopment plan was never adopted from 2011 till 2017. There was a traffic study done in 2015 to try to figure out, can we accommodate redevelopment? Because this area that we're talking about was designated in 2007. So it's been a redevelopment area since 2007 in the area between Water Street and the river. It is an area, I don't think it's anybody argues that it's an area that is not being used to its full potential. The problem was the traffic circulation, and you're absolutely right. If you're going to try to encourage more development, which we thought we needed to revitalize the existing downtown, then you're going to need to accommodate that traffic. And that's one of the reasons why in 2018, the township obtained a $5.6 million grant from the Federal Highway Administration to pay for those improvements. So, but we had to have a plan first before we could do that. We're in the middle of that now. And that probably, we're anticipating, according to the agreement that we have with the Federal Highway Administration, that the work on those improvements would start in 2023. It would be done has to be done by 2025. So, and the bridges on both sides of Herflicker Street have to be replaced. That's in the works with the Department of Transportation. So There's a lot of circulation improvements that'll be happening before this redevelopment plan ever builds out. So you're absolutely right, but we've been accounting for it.
But the thing is, when you did the road improvement at 166 and 37, it didn't fix it. It just made a bigger mess.
First of all, the township had nothing to do with that. That was a Department of Transportation project.
That's what we're starting with. That's already a problem that we're dealing with. And now you're bringing in an influx of cars and people, and where are they all going to go? Where are they all going to go?
Every single project has to be able to be self-sufficient. They have to handle their own parking needs. But it is really has been the case from the first time we started planning this, going back to when the bid worked on this plan going in 2011, that in order to revitalize downtown, we needed to bring more customers to those businesses. And one of the ways to do that is to bring more residential into the downtown. And that's being done all over the country.
Mr. Roberts, can I ask a question just so we have some clarification? This is an ordinance amending the redevelopment plan for the Phase 1 downtown waterfront redevelopment area. That redevelopment plan is already in place.
It's been in place since December 26th of 2007.
So we're not voting on that
And we're not
tonight.
changing any of the development parameters. I'm just updating.
So since December 26th of 2017, this has been in place.
It has been in place. It's
And-
been online and it's been available to the public. We've had graphics, we've had the actual plan, we've had animations of a model of the plan ever since 2007.
And we're not voting on 8 to 12-story buildings then tonight. You're voting on adding a property to that plan.
Pretty much, and updating the plan so that it reflects the actual current conditions.
And we have to add that property so that the $5.6 million federal grant money that we're going to get for our roadways would be covered.
Well, I think that the two of them are definitely linked, because without the road improvements, you can't support the redevelopment. So otherwise, you're gonna have a lot of road improvements and nothing much else.
This does increase the value of the property brought in, correct? So tonight, you're bringing in new properties into that area. Designation, right?
Yeah, the properties that we're bringing in, however, are either parking lots, old railroad rights-of-way, or the bus terminal.
Currently.
That we're suggesting to be added tonight.
Thank you.
So what are we bringing parking lots in for? Like,
The bus terminal parking lot.
The bus terminal parking lot.
No, they're not bringing in parking lots. What they're doing is something that's currently a parking lot. They're going to put it in the area in need of redevelopment, so if the developer wants to develop it, they can.
Well,
That's
just to be
what they're
accurate,
doing.
The area is already in an area in need of redevelopment, but the plan didn't count it as being addressed by this plan. Okay?
However, until somebody drives through downtown Toms River at rush hour, there's no room for all those cars coming in for 400 apartments or whatever, businesses or whatever. It's just, there's no room. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mary, you would just step up to the mic, state your name, position.
My name is Marin Bellick. I'm the Executive Director for Downtown Toms River Business Improvement District, and I wanted to thank Dave Roberts for actually working on this project since 2017. I started a year ago. I've been very involved with Dave, talking on a daily basis. I've helped, and I'm very comfortable with the downtown. You know, we started downtown Toms River. My commitment is to see the downtown of Toms River to thrive, to become a tourist destination, to become a hotspot, not only for the community, but for the surrounding area, to benefit our residents, to benefit our home values, to benefit the restaurants, to benefit everybody. And I'm very confident with the work that he's done, and the bid stands very supportive of the commitment to the redevelopment project. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir. Step up to the mic, state your name. Step up to the mic, state your name and address.
David Sicozzi, C-I-C-C-O-Z-Z-I, 847 Ocean View Drive. And for full disclosure, I own property in downtown Toms River for over 30 years, commercial and residential. I'm also running for council this November, and I'm chairman of the planning board here in Toms River. I've been on for 11 years, and I'm the third longest serving member to my knowledge. So I bought this property as an investment in a business for myself 30-something years ago, and it was terrible. It was actually terrible. It was difficult to get tenants. It was difficult to run businesses. Everybody was fleeing. There was just no business, and it wasn't supported by the residents of Toms River. Then years ago, under a different party and different mayor, they changed the zoning. They recognized that something had to be done down here, and they were allowing, from my knowledge, the first time to put residential on the second floor. And I said, wow, this is great. Now we're going to have a downtown like other towns in New Jersey on the waterfront. You look at our waterfront compared to Red Bank, and, it's so numerous, we're lacking. So I'm behind this project, not for selfish reasons, but for selfish reasons for the township. We have to think 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now. I have 3 children, and I want to leave them this property. I don't want to leave them a mess. And we got to grow. So I'm very thankful for the mayor, Lou, our professionals, and all the council people for doing this. And I believe in my heart it's a good thing for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member of the public wish to be heard on this? Yes, sir.
Paul DiGregorio, Goose Creek Road. When the original redevelopment plan was before the planning board back in 2017, I attended that meeting and I spoke in favor of it. And I just wanted to come here tonight and reiterate those reasons why I support it. And it doesn't take an expert to just look down that way and see that it's a mess. You have parking lots, you have empty storefronts, you have industrial sites that have not been utilized 30, 40, 50 years. This plan is responsible. It takes into account that we need infrastructure improvements. The bill grant and the proposed improvements recognize that. The need for parking also included in that. This is something that this town needs for a rateable base to reduce the taxes for all of our residents here. When the town does good, when our ratables are good, we all do good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to be heard on this item? Yes, ma'am.
Elizabeth Puglisi, 7B Westlake Drive, Manchester. I think maybe the concern is that this area was thriving at one time, and it had nothing to do with redevelopment. Those stores were filled, and there were customers. If you were born and raised in this area, you were privy to that, and you're aware of that. I'm not saying I'm not for redevelopment, but I am absolutely saying for let's work with what we have before we move on to something else. And another thing, if you've been born and raised in this area, many of us are not looking for it to be a hot spot. We're looking for it to be safe for our children. We're looking for it to be family oriented, for small business support. We're not looking for bells and whistles and fireworks. And I'm not the only one who's taking a stand in reference to this. So I will say that those buildings were hot. They were moving. They were shaking years ago. There's a reason that they're not now. And the answer is not always redevelopment. It's working with what we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to be heard?
Seeing none, move to close the public comment.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Move the ordinance on final.
Second.
Motion was made by Council Vice President Maruka, seconded by Councilwoman Hurick. Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurick.
Yes.
Councilman Cobb.
Yes.
Councilman Lentano.
I just want to remind everybody that we are not voting on a plan or any developer or anything like that. We are just combining a lot into a redevelopment area, and I vote yes.
Councilman Roderick.
Well, we've been told time and time again that there's no plan for 500 to 1,000 apartments downtown. And now we just heard something different. We heard that there was a plan, that we have seen a plan, but that's not what was said just a few meetings ago. I've personally seen the plan. I know the residents downtown don't want to see another 500 to 1,000 apartments, particularly with a pilot program that would that would give no funding to the schools at all and just put an extra $600,000 or $700,000 in the township's pocket, but cost us millions in educational costs. I'm opposed to it, so I respectfully vote no.
Councilman Zermbach.
I share Ms. Puglisi's concerns with regard to the safety of our children down here and the safety of our downtown. And I think we've taken a lot of steps, and I think with the removal of the Red Carpet Inn and the purchase by the township of the Red Carpet Inn, you saw a change in our downtown. The police had responded there 750 times in 1 year. So that area that we're discussing was a complete drag to our downtown. People were afraid to walk down at night because drugs were being sold. All sorts of things were going on inside that building, and we all know that. And bail reform changed our downtown too, because bail reform removed all of the bail bonds businesses from downtown that were bringing an element into our downtown. So you come down here on a Friday or Saturday night and you've lived around here for a long time, you're starting to see a revitalized downtown. And so we are very aware of safety concerns. I agree with you, and we will continue to focus on that, because you have to be safe and have to feel safe in order to come down. And I agree with you, I support the small businesses. I'm voting yes tonight to this to allow for the revitalization. I hear our residents loud and clear. I hear Ms. Tormolen, and I don't disagree with you on the size of some of these buildings and the concepts. I've listened and discussed with a lot of residents, and I can promise you that we're going to take a careful look at every one of these plans that comes before us. Councilman Roderick is correct with regard to a pilot right now, right? And the concerns we have with our funding for school being cut under S2 and then turning around and agreeing to a concept that doesn't provide taxes to the school. We're aware of that. So it's not something that we take lightly. We're just trying to make sure the public is aware of what we're voting on tonight and what we're not voting on. And the idea that we just voted on a plan to put 500 to 1,000 apartments isn't true. That's not true, and it shouldn't be said, because it causes confusion, it causes fear. It's fiction, right? We're going to have an opportunity to decide on that. You'll have an opportunity to come here and voice your opinion on it. That's not what's being decided tonight. So for that reason, I'm voting yes, but I hear both of you, and will continue to communicate with both of you.
Council President Gagan.
Again, listening to our professionals, in order to kind of close the loop and get the build grant that's desperately needed downtown, the 5.6 million to move traffic along. It's another piece of the puzzle. It's government. It's the way it works. Sometimes it doesn't always have to make sense, but we hear everybody, your concerns, and we're taking them to heart. But I vote yes.
9 is an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Toms River, Ocean County, New Jersey, amending and supplementing 175-21B of the Township Code to establish non-residential daily fee rates for the township swimming pool. Final reading.
Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this? Yes, sir. You would just step up to the mic, state your name and full address, please, for the record.
Mark Yellen, I'm 103 Joyce Court, and I live in Brick, New Jersey. I moved to Brick, New Jersey about 10 years ago, and I moved to a community that does not have a public pool, nor can I put one in my backyard. So when I want to go swimming to a pool, I use Toms River's pool. You charge a little bit more if you don't live in the town. I believe it's $7 and $8 on the weekends. That's the current price, okay. I understand that there's a proposal to double that fee, possibly from what I've understood online, for things I've read online, that people are coming from out of town and not respecting the facility, doing bad things, drinking, urinating in public, et cetera, et cetera. And it was noted that some of these folks have out-of-town plates. Now, a lot of people, a lot of good, decent people that like to swim come from other parts of Ocean County, like Brick, Point Borough, et cetera, where we don't have access to a public pool. So we come and use yours, we pay the extra fee that you ask us to, and we behave, and we're good neighbors. So what I wanted to ask for kind of a compromise of fairness, so to speak, if you'd have, you consider like a tier. If you're an Ocean County resident, but you're not a Toms River Township resident, you pay $10 instead of the $14 that you're proposing. I think that's a little more fair because it's not the people from Brick or from coming from across town that you're, I wouldn't say trying to keep out, but trying to limit access to the pool. So I'd like to ask if you would consider that as a compromise. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Does any other member of the public have any questions or concerns?
Seeing none, move to close public comment.
We have a second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move the ordinance on final.
Second.
Motion made by Council Vice President Maruka, seconded by Councilwoman Hurek. Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurek.
I just wanted to be clear, based on the comments, that currently the rates are equal for in and out of town. So this is where we are going to increase it for out of town. So I vote yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Yes.
Councilman Lentano.
I just want to say, I toured the facility and I spoke to some of the residents. You know, our residents right now are, even though the pool area was purchased with Green Acre funding from the state, our residents do pay to maintain the facility, employee expenses, and things like that. So we are offering an incentive to our residents who are, you know, fronting the cost of the facility. So I vote yes.
Councilman Roderick.
This is a good start. However, I believe putting a Class 2 officer at the pool would go a long way in restoring public confidence. And we should also consider any other means we can to alleviate the concerns of the residents of Snug Harbor. Perhaps the increase in revenue would help pay for those things. We will see, I guess. Another concern I know that was raised by residents of Snug Harbor is whether or not Mayor Hill would forego the 20 days that it normally, the waiting period for something like this to take effect. So I guess I have a question for Mayor Hill. Mayor Hill, will you allow that to go through?
That would be a legal question. I know we did speak to Mr. Merlino about that.
The 20 days, the 20-day estoppel period is required by law. The only way that it can be waived would be a resolution of the council, and that's only in emergent situations. This doesn't qualify as an emergency under the law.
Okay. Well, I guess that addresses that for the residents of Snug Harbor. Again, I vote yes, and we should continue to have the back of the folks in Snug Harbor.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes, I'm going to vote yes. I appreciate the council getting this addressed quickly, and appreciate the residents coming out to bring this to our attention. It's the residents that come to meetings that can alert us to incidents like this, and I think everybody got right on it. I know a number of the council went out, spoke to the residents, greatly appreciative of that. Certainly to the gentleman that comes from Brick, I certainly hear your comments. I would leave that to Mr. Merlino. I don't know if the law really provides for a situation where we can offer. Mr. Merlino, can we offer a different rate for county as opposed to out of county?
The regulations allow a resident versus non-resident, but there's nothing in there that suggests that you can tier it based on county.
I don't want you to think we're not listening to you or hearing you, and we appreciate you certainly coming down here, but I thought that was going to be the answer, that it would be a situation where we couldn't set it up differently. So with that, I vote yes.
Council President Gagan.
Yes.
10 is an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Toms River, Ocean County, New Jersey, establishing a new Chapter 234 of the Township Code to prohibit the operation of cannabis establishments, distributors, and delivery services in the township. Final reading.
Okay. This is the final reading. Public comments were heard at the May 11th meeting. So at this time, I'll take a motion from the council.
Motion to move on final?
Second.
Okay.
Council President.
Motion was made by Vice President Maruka and seconded by Councilman Latano. Council Vice President Maruka.
Council President.
One moment, yes.
May
Councilman
I
Bureau.
just make an impromptu report from the Cannabis Committee related to this, so
Go
that
ahead.
the public knows that we're working on it? Thank you. So the Cannabis Committee has met 3 times so far. We're making some progress. However, the state of New Jersey has imposed a deadline of August 22nd. And that deadline means that we have to have a first reading, a second reading, and the 20-day estoppel period, barring an emergency. So in order to give the committee time to do the work properly, to do the work that it has been charged with by this council, the committee is recommending that at this time, we do pass a ban as listed in Ordinance 10 with a companion ordinance, which is number 11, which would put a sunset provision on the ban that would be presumably passed with ordinance number 10, so that the committee can continue its work in good faith and know that the council in good faith is providing for an opportunity guaranteed to revisit this issue in a few months.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilwoman Herrick.
Oh, no, I think I
think
seconded
someone
it.
else seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yep. Councilman Latano, I'm sorry.
I just want to add real quick, I want to thank the people, the citizens and the council who have contributed to the Cannabis Committee. You're taking time out of your days, and, we are interested in getting your perspective and coming up with a game plan together. But as you know, the state's bill of the 245 pages, we kind of told everybody when we introduced that we weren't going to accept the bill in its entirety, so we're hoping to come up with a plan that more is geared toward Toms River, if that's what we so choose. So I vote yes.
Thank you. Okay. Councilwoman Herrick.
Yes.
Councilman Cobb.
I need to abstain.
Councilman Roderick.
Yes, I vote in favor of the ban.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes.
And Council President Gagan.
Yes.
11 is an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Toms River, Ocean County, New Jersey, amending and supplementing Chapter 234 Cannabis Regulations of the Township Code to establish an expiration date for the general prohibition against the operation of cannabis establishments, distributors, and delivery services in the township. First reading.
Move the ordinance on first reading.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilwoman Herrick, seconded by Councilman Turnbach. Councilwoman Herrick.
Yes.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Abstain.
Councilman Latano.
Yes.
Councilman Roderick.
There's no reason to place a hard expiration date on this ordinance. The council can at any time decide that it wants to change things now that we've agreed to ban it. So setting a sunset provision appears to me like there's some weakness up here, particularly given Councilman Latano's comments. I think Toms River is a family town, not a party town. So there's definitely a new vision for downtown, one with hundreds of additional apartments, legalized recreational marijuana, and I don't think that's a vision that the residents of downtown share with the business community. So, frankly, I vote no on this sunset provision.
Council Vice President Maruka.
We had asked the residents to come and submit resumes to put together a committee. I think the committee has gotten together, Councilwoman Herrick has said 3 times, and there's been some discussion on that. Advancing this ordinance on first read just brings it to a second reading and a public hearing on that. I will vote yes on this so we could get to that point and hear from the residents and to see if the committee can come up with something by a certain date. Like I said, I'm only voting yes on this so we could get it to a second read and a public hearing.
Council President Gagan.
Yes.
12 is an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Toms River, Ocean County, New Jersey, amending and supplementing Chapter 147, Salary and Compensation of the Township Code to establish the compensation of certain township employees, first reading.
Move the ordinance on first.
Second?
Motion made by Council Vice President Maruka, seconded by Councilwoman Herrick. Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilwoman Herrick.
Yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Yes.
Councilman Natano.
Yes.
Councilman Roderick.
There are a number of raises in this ordinance that I believe are justified, and a number that I do not think are. Each bargaining group should have been placed on the agenda separately to give folks the opportunity to vote separately. This is not the way things are ordinarily done. These are separate contracts. For these reasons, I'm going to abstain.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes.
Council President Gagan.
Yes.
13 is an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Toms River, Ocean County, New Jersey, increasing the open space tax by an additional 1 cent per $100 of total township equalized real property valuation, subject to voter approval at the November 2021 general election, first reading.
Move the ordinance on first?
Second.
Motion was made by Councilwoman Herrick, seconded by Council Vice President Maruka. Councilwoman Herrick.
Yes.
Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Yes.
Councilman Lutano.
Just to give a quick background on this, Mayor Hill proposed this a few weeks back. The residents have expressed concern over shrinking open space in our township. The way open space works is that the state, the county, and the township can purchase open space. The way it is funded is through the open space tax. So this proposal is 1 cent on per $100 of valuation, and this would allow the township to purchase open space and conserve it. So I vote yes.
Councilman Roderick.
Well, residents want us to preserve more open space, and I think asking the residents if they would approve a small increase, I believe it's 1 penny per $100, or about $35 a household. You know, it's a nice idea. I think it's a good idea that we put it to the voters to decide. But we should also consider asking the county to purchase more open space in Toms River, as it's come to my attention that there is $70 million in their open space fund. So I think we should explore that as well. So for the aforementioned reasons, I vote yes.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes.
Council President Gagan.
Yes.
14 is a resolution of the governing body of the Township of Toms River, Ocean County, New Jersey, for certification of the annual audit for the year 2020.
Move the resolution.
Second?
Motion was made by Councilwoman Herrick, seconded by Councilman Lutano. Councilwoman Herrick.
Yes.
Councilman Lutano.
Yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Yes.
Councilman Roderick.
I have a quick question for Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davidson.
Sorry to catch you on your way out, I know. It's your last meeting, correct?
Correct.
I was just curious, was there a mistake in our audit this year? A $3 million mistake?
Not to my knowledge. Do you have any more?
Well, no,
$3 million, Councilman?
Well, I'm asking here. There's rumor out there that we had some sort of mistake in our audit. Is that correct?
There was no mistake in our audit. They audited our financial statements. There was no audit adjustments. It's an unqualified opinion, which is the cleanest opinion an auditor can have. It means your audit is free of any material misstatement.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify before you go, and thank you for that, and thank you for your service to our town.
Thank you, Councilman.
I'm going to abstain to number 14.
Councilman Sternbach.
Mr. Davidson, I'm sorry for that, and we appreciate all the work that you've done up here. And some things can be addressed not in public if there's questions, and certainly felt that was unnecessary on your last night here. So I appreciate what you've done. You've been excellent for us. I vote yes.
Council Vice President Maruka.
It's because of the hard work of Mr. Davidson, our CFO, and the administration and our staff that we got to the point of a clean audit without any corrections or any errors in there. And I want to thank him for the past few years he's been here with us. He's been an asset to us, and we will sorely miss you, Alex, but I will vote yes on this.
And Council President Gagan.
Again, I want to thank you for all your service and everything you've done, your intuition and being available out of hours, weekends and whatnot to answer any questions. You're a true asset to us. Certainly, I can understand why you're leaving. You're closer to home, hopefully a friendly council to work with, and I vote yes.
I would just like to point out, I do get a rebuttal. Mr. Davidson doesn't conduct the audit. He's our CFO, so the audit is conducted by an outside firm. Mr. Davidson is our CFO.
Right, but he does prepare the things for the audit company.
He does not conduct the audit.
Right, okay. Right.
So implying that he does, I think, is disingenuous.
Oh, no, I would.
I'm just saying, he doesn't conduct the audit, and we all value Mr. Davidson.
Thank you very much.
And we all want to see him do well and appreciate his service. Thank you, sir.
I wasn't implying that he conducted the audit. He puts together our budget, he does our financials, and he gets us where we need to be financially, keep us stable in this township. That was my direction to Mr. Davidson. If some people misconstrue that he did the audit,
That's on them.
that's on them.
Mhm. Okay. I will ask you to come up again, Mr. Davidson, for resolution number 15, please.
Do you want me to read that into record real quick, and then he can make his comment, or?
Yeah, please, and
That's
15
okay.
and 16 while you're here before you.
15 is a resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Toms River, Ocean County, New Jersey, making applications to the local finance board pursuant to NJSA 40A:2-51.
So this resolution is allowing us to make application to be heard at the local finance board, as has been reported in Asbury Park Press and has been going on since 2004. C. Brigatti, now BASF Corporation, appealed their taxes from 2004 to 2019, at which point in 19 the assessment was lowered to stop the accruing of larger tax appeals. We lost that appeal. We lost the appeal to the appeal, and the Supreme Court failed to hear any more arguments. That appeal is final. It is $17.4 million. We have $5.2 million in our reserve, which is going to be utilized to offset the impact to the taxpayer. We started that reserve in 2012 with an initial deposit. Every year we've deposited more money into it. It's grown to $5.2 million, inclusive of a $1 million budget appropriation in the 2021 budget. The remaining $13 million will have to be bonded, either with long-term bonds or short-term notes that will be rolled over year. What we're going to the local finance board for is for them to give us an approval for an amortization schedule. What they try to use is a $50 assessment to the average taxpayer as a benchmark for it. However, that's just a benchmark. They're not beholden to it. Based upon past What we've done in the past to set us up for minimizing the impact of the taxpayer and not just essentially, for lack of a better term, burying our heads in the sand will look favorably upon us. We have asked for a 10-year repayback period for this bond and/or note, and obviously it depends upon the interest rate market at the time that we're going to take out the debt sometime in September. We must pay the appeal by October 1st.
Very good. Thank you very much. Council, your pleasure.
Move the resolution.
Motion made by Council Vice President Maruka, seconded by Councilwoman Hurick. Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurick.
Yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Yes.
Councilman Lozano.
Yes.
Councilman Roderick.
Yes.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes.
Council Vice President, Council President Gagan.
Yes.
And then 16 is a refunding bond ordinance providing for payment of amounts owing to BASF or BASF Corporation for taxes levied in and by the Township of Toms River and the County of Ocean, New Jersey, appropriating $13 million thereof and authorizing the issuance of $13 million bonds or notes of the Township of Toms River for financing the cost thereof. First reading.
Move the ordinance on first.
Second.
Motion was made by Council Vice President Maruka, seconded by Councilwoman Hurick. Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurick.
Yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Yes.
Councilman Lutano.
Yes.
Councilman Roderick.
I would just like to say shame on BASF. When you think about what Sibagagi had done to this community and the lasting impacts, it's very sad that they would even go after us for back taxes. Shameful. That being said, the courts have clearly stated that we need to pay this money, so I vote yes.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes.
Council President Gagan.
Again, I feel it's shameful that Sibagagi/BASF is going down this road. We are trying to make good financial decisions for the town. As you can see, this started many years ago, long before many of us were up here. So we settled the RLUIPA lawsuit earlier at no cost to the taxpayers. What's frustrating to me personally, although we owe BASF this money, if they owed us the money, half would be going to the schools approximately, so much percentage to the county, so much percentage to the fire district. Now that it's, a tax appeal, it's 100% on us locally. So we have no other alternative, unfortunately, but I vote yes. Consent agenda.
All right, so now we are moving on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under item consent agenda will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussions of these items. If discussion is desired on any item, that item will be considered separately.
Okay. Does any member of the council have any number or letter they would wish discussed or voted on separately?
You can just discuss G, Council President.
Item G is in go. Any other member of the council have any item to be discussed separately? Any member of the public have any item they wish to be discussed separately? Questions? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Seeing none, I move the balance of the consent agenda except for item G.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilwoman Hurick, seconded by Council Vice President Maruka to move the balance of the consent agenda with the exception of item G. Councilwoman Hurick.
Yes.
Council Vice President Maruka.
Yes.
Councilman Kopp.
Yes.
Councilman Lutano.
Yes.
Councilman Roderick.
Yes.
Councilman Turnbach.
Yes.
Council President Gagan.
Yes. Do you have questions or an explanation? Item G? You wanna come up and explain it? Do you want,
No, just with regard to item G, if I can make a comment on it.
Yes,
It's, item G refers to a grant that our police department is receiving for body-worn cameras, and the Attorney General has passed a statewide rule that every municipality, every police department now has to wear these body-worn cameras. They're going to cost our township about $1.3 million. The $313,000 obviously helps towards that. We had discussed at the last council meeting a resolution supporting a bill that's in the Senate and the Assembly right now to allow our police department to review those body-worn cameras when they're writing their reports and prior to writing their reports. And I certainly recognize that we had a lot on this agenda tonight, and I thank everyone that's prepared this agenda. But I would respectfully ask for consideration for that, as it's a pressing item. It's an item that's important to our police department, and it's an item that really makes sense. We're investing in these body-worn cameras. They're designed to protect our police department, our officers. Certainly, there should be no rule in effect or law in effect that they can't review those cameras prior to writing the report. It doesn't make any sense, and I'd ask for a resolution supporting the law to change that. Other than that, I'd vote yes on this.
Okay.
On G.
First.
I'd move G.
Second?
Second. Oh, you-
Motion-
sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Motion made by Councilman Turnbach, seconded by Councilwoman Hurick. Councilman Turnbach?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurick?
Yes.
Councilman Kopp?
Yes.
Councilman Latano?
Yes.
Councilman Roderick?
I honestly haven't had an opportunity to speak to officers regarding their feelings wearing a body cam, but I certainly know I'm a teacher and I wouldn't want to wear a body cam. Again, this is state legislation. I'm going to abstain on G.
Council Vice President Maruka?
I'd like to ask Mr. Molina a question. We've had passed, and in all due respect to Councilman Turnbach and the rest of the council, we had passed at the beginning of the year, and we use our council guidelines that we cannot do a resolution from the dais without previously having it prepared or things of that nature. Are there exceptions to that rule, or we follow, or?
Prepared for the next meeting.
I mean, I can, or are we speaking about the resolution that Councilman Turnback?
Yes.
proposed? I mean, I can have that prepared for the next meeting.
Okay.
And we can introduce it then, there'll be no problem.
All right.
It would be difficult to introduce it from the floor tonight, because I don't have all the information,
I'll
including the
provide.
bill number.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Yes, and I think, that's what I'm saying, all due respect to Councilman Turnbuck, and we support our police department 100%, but I think we need to reference the Senate bill, the Assembly bill, and any other background we can get, and have that prepared for our next meeting.
I agree, and it will be timely, so thank you.
Right.
That's perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay. You want to have a motion to reconsider, Councilman Turnbuck? Your
The motion that I had requested tonight was to approve G, that being the award of the grant. I would just ask at the
Okay.
next
Meeting to have- okay.
meeting to have that resolution, and I'll provide all of the information to Mr. Merlino with regard to it.
Okay, great. Then I vote yes.
Okay. And Council President Gagan?
Yes.
Okay, next, we have the reports.
Move the
reports.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Latano and seconded by Councilwoman Hurick. Councilman Latano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurick?
Yes.
Councilman Kopp?
I need to abstain from the following bills payable.
This is
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
reports, I'm sorry.
The report.
reports into the record.
Report bill.
Okay. Councilman Roderick?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Turnbach?
Yes, and I think it's honestly worth noting that how well Bailey Golf Course is doing. We oftentimes see the reports, and not many people comment on the reports, but 2020 Bailey Golf Course year-to-date through June took in $456,554. Right now, it's taken in a little under $775,000. So I'm happy to see how well our golf course is doing. I vote yes.
Council Vice President Maruka?
Yes.
And Council President Gagan?
Yes.
Next are the bills.
Move the bill list, please.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilman Latano and seconded by Councilwoman Hurick. Councilman Latano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurick?
I need to abstain from PO 20-00569, 21-02969, 21-03199, 21-03351, 21-03352, and 21-03393, payable to Remington and Vernick Engineers. Yes to the balance.
Councilman Kopp?
I need to abstain from the following bills payable to Ona Little Associates, 21-02971 and 21-03350, and a bill payable to Silverton First Aid, 21-03494. Yes to the balance.
Councilman Roderick.
Direct development, I had, when the bills and abstention list came around, via email, I asked Destiny to pull out direct development, as I'm not really sure why, but it was close to $4,700 that we were billed. I don't know if it's this month or this meeting, but I'm not so sure what's being done by this Democratic PR firm. And I'm not so sure that it doesn't violate campaign finance. So respectfully, I'm going to vote no on the bill to direct development.
Are you okay with the rest of the balance?
I'd be voting yes to the rest of the balance, yes.
Councilman Turnbach.
I have to abstain from PO 21-03593, payable to the magistrates, 21-03667, payable to officers of Dasty McGuckin, PO 21-00653, payable to officers Siddle Holzappel, 21-03320, payable to the Hope Center, I'm a member of their board, and PO 21-01492, payable to Karen Sage, I'm a local attorney in town. Conflicts with those, yes to the balance.
Council Vice President Maruka.
Abstain to PO 21-03667, payable to Dasty McGuckin Attorneys at Law, and to PO 21-03593, payroll, Tom's River payroll, line item 97, to the NJMVC lease program. I have a conflict, yes to the balance.
Council President Gagan.
Just one abstention to Silverton First Aid, purchase order 21-03494, yes to the balance.
And that brings us to elected official comments.
Okay, Mayor Hill.
Thank you, Council President. I want to first recognize Officer Bridget Bedalia. She's a relatively new police officer. She was a Class 2 who was working downstairs in security for us. We swore her in February, so she's a very new police officer. Her actions saved a life, along with the Good Samaritans, Joseph and Christopher Drago and Miguel and Otero, who couldn't be here tonight. I've also asked the chief to put her in for a life-saving award. I think she's very worthy of that. And again, it's nice to see that as we move our officers from Class 2 into fully sworn officers, that we're getting good candidates to fill in these vacancies when we have retirement. So bravo Zulu to Bridget for doing a great job. I want to thank the council for passing the first reading, the ordinance for 1 penny on the open space tax. I will tell you that Councilman Roderick talked about the County Natural Lands Trust. Councilman Roderick, we've done a number of open space purchases with the county. We have one in the queue right now that contacted my office, and I sent a letter over to Mr. Villinger at the County Natural Lands Trust. The process is moving forward on that parcel. However, there are properties that we need to purchase that the county can assist us with. And we have another round of COA coming up in 2025, and we know what we've absorbed already in the first 2 rounds of COA. And I think the more property we can keep in our open space inventory, that will protect us from any further development, particularly in the northwest part of town, particularly since the state doesn't seem to want to move on any infrastructure improvements as far as transportation, Route 9, Route 70. You've got 2 townships with roughly 100,000 people in each, and it's connected by a 2-lane road, 1 lane in each direction. I know of no other town in the state of New Jersey where that's happening. Also want to point out, again, this is Alex's last meeting. Alex, it's been a pleasure working with you. He's done a great job for us. I will say that the audit is proof of the job that Alex is doing. They're auditing our township, they're auditing our budget, they're auditing our expenses. That's all Alex's bailiwick, and we got a clean audit with no remarks. So, Alex, it's always great to have 100% clean audit, and thank you. This weekend, the annual Pleasant Plains Fire Department's having their chicken barbecue. It's a takeout event. Support our local firefighters. Saturday, the BID's having the Downtown Summer in the Street Festival, and Friday and Saturday's Downtown Night Out. And finally, a happy 21st birthday to Councilman Kopp. You don't look old enough to attend any of these libation places downtown.
Last year was the first year.
Okay. Happy birthday.
Thanks, appreciate it.
That's all I have, Council President.
Councilmember Roderick?
Well, I'd just like to say that our thoughts, hearts, and prayers go out to the people of Cuba, as the right of self-determination is not only an American right, it's a God-given right to all peoples. My father-in-law and mother-in-law escaped communist Cuba. They still have a lot of family there, and things are terrible. People lack access to just basic necessities. And for it to be so close to our country, just 70, 80 miles away, and yet be so far from what we have here in America, just goes to show that communism and socialism is a failed system. Again, I just want to wish all the people over there the best, and hopefully one day that regime will fall, and they will have the right of self-determination, just as we have here.
Thank you. Councilman Turnbuck?
Thank you, Council President. I wanted to first thank Deputy Chief Michael Belcher, congratulate him on his retirement. And I've worked with the Deputy Chief for a number of years in my professional capacity. And one thing's clear, when you sit in a meeting with Deputy Chief Belcher, he's a natural leader, he's a natural speaker, he's been an asset to our town forever. And I'm excited for him on his new venture to the Port Authority, and we certainly owe him a lot. I'd ask the officers that are here tonight to please pass that message along to Deputy Chief Belcher. We, in Toms River, have had a lot of news lately, obviously, about our Board of Education and the council, and I want the residents to know that we are working to try and help our students up here on the council and to try and address S2. Specifically, I've been in discussions with Superintendent Gianella and Bill Doring, our business administrator, for a number of months now relative to S2 and how our district can deal with that and what we can do. And in July 1st, the state budget was passed. And in that state budget, there's been $50 million set aside in what they're calling stabilization aid. And that stabilization aid is designed for S2 districts, for districts that are suffering from the S2 cuts. So we've been in constant communication with regard to that. And what's needed is we have to draft a plan, really the Board of Education has to draft a plan of how they're going to deal with S2 and submit that to the state for their consideration. Again, I'm going to ask the council for a second resolution tonight in support of the government, our state government, providing that stabilization aid to Toms River. $50 million has been set aside. Communities like Toms River, Brick, Jersey City are in desperate need of stabilization aid. Understanding we have to draft a plan to continue to address S2 and being hopeful of other legislation that's presently pending the Senate Assembly on how to address S2. But in the meantime, there's $50 million in stabilization aid set aside. I think we need to be vocal in a positive way as to why our community can benefit from that. I know our Board of Education is on top of it. Had communication with them this morning with regard to that stabilization aid. So we have an excellent interim superintendent in Tom Gianella. Our community owes him a debt of gratitude. We owe him a debt of gratitude for extending his 30 days, and he continues to work night and day. And I continue to talk to him. And Bill Doring is also an asset, as well as our members of the Board of Ed who volunteer their time and have been really under a microscope that is unfortunate and unfair to them. And I see one of them in the crowd, and I want you to understand we appreciate what you do, but we're here, and we can do something on this council to advocate for our students. It's critical. It's, I think, one of the #1 issues in our town, and I think we should consider a resolution for the next agenda meeting, respectfully requesting some of that $50 million come to Toms River to help deal with the cuts. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councilman Lieutenant.
Thank you, Council President. I can speak for myself, and I'm sure the rest of us, that we would be in support of your resolution for getting the emergency funding for our township. We suffered millions and millions of dollars over the last few years of school funding cuts because of the funding formula. So I think we would all be in support of that, Councilman Turnbuck. I also want to wish Councilman Kopp a happy birthday. It was quite a day for you to spend your day with us here, and we really appreciate your commitment to the township. I want to thank the rest of you here and at home who are participating in our town's government. I wish more of us would do it, but I want you to know we up here appreciate you. And I want to say goodbye to Mr. Davison, the CFO. I was there on your interview before I was even sworn in. And I'm on the Finance Committee and the Capital Committee, which work very closely with the Finance Department. And he has been a leader, and he will be very much missed. Thank you for your service to our town and to our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Maruka.
Thank you, Council President. Mayor and Council Turnbuck had spoken about, #1, our police department and Officer Badalis and the heroic efforts of her saving a life. And Councilman Turnbuck touched on D.C. Belcher, who just retired. And we've had so many retirements in our police department over the past few years. And you miss those people because it's a lot of knowledge going out the door, a lot of leadership going out the door. But then you look at the younger officers that are coming in, like Officer Badalis, and you know what? Toms River's in good hands. Our police department, you know, we're losing leaders, but we're also bringing along good people and good officers. And I just think it's a testament to Chief Little and everyone at our department and all the men and women that serve, either sworn or civilian, with Toms River Police Department. There is something on the agenda this evening. It's a road elevation project. We're going for another grant project, and that was for Mizzen and I believe Pinta over in a Snug Harbor. These projects have worked throughout the township. They are very effective, and I'm glad to see that this was on the agenda for this evening. And I just want to talk a little bit about our police department, an event they have coming up. It's the beginning of August, and I didn't want to hold it to the next meeting because it's only be a week away. But on August 3rd, they're having their night out, community night out, and that's going to be down, I believe, in Huddy Park this year. We didn't have it last year, had it the year before, and it was over at Shelter Cove, and it was extremely successful there. But what they've really done is they're going to be combining their national night out with the United Festival, where we bring together all the community groups. We've had that 1 year, and that was actually 2 years ago on Labor Day. We had that on Huddy Park, and I just think you couldn't have married two better events together between National Night Out and our TR United event, because it's going to bring together our police department, who is the driving force behind the TR United, along with all our clergy, all of our different organizations and all ethnic groups throughout the township. And I don't think you could ever go wrong when you're bringing people together and uniting them, and people get to experience different cultures and see that we have more in common than our differences. So I think that's going to be a great event, and that's why I wanted to mention it tonight, so people have time to mark their calendars for August 3rd for our National Night Out. And then also there's another event coming up in August. It's a golf outing by one of our community events, really charity events in town. nonprofit is Just Believe. They're having their golf outing, and that's going to be on August 9th. I know I'm serving on the committee with Mayor and Councilman Turnbach, and I know Councilwoman York is also very active, and most of the council members are very active in that group there. So I just say if there's plea for any golfers out there, any businesses that want to take a sponsorship, or anyone just want to come and celebrate at the dinner or the luncheon or things of that nature, you can get in touch with either the mayor, Councilman Turnbach, or myself, and come support this worthwhile cause and this worthwhile event. And that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hirsch.
I was going to mention National Night Out. I think it's really exciting that the police department, they have so many innovative programs. We've got one of the best police departments in existence, I really think. They just do an incredible job for the people of Toms River. They do outreach constantly, and this is just an example of more of that. And so I want to thank Chief Little and all of the officers that take part in just every day, and also in these types of events that a lot of time it's above and beyond. You know, they're not there getting paid, they're there doing extra for the people of the township. So that is August 3rd, as you said. And it's really exciting to have TR United around the world in Toms River be combined with this event, because we hope that will increase attendance at both events. So, and then I wanted to point out, as we mentioned, our Arts District earlier this evening and the Community Arts Project. One of the businesses that is part of both of those, they're in the Arts District and they are part of the CAP. They are Exit 82, and they're having, they're partnering with Save the Barnegat Bay in the last weekend of July and the first weekend of August to put on a production of Hair. We think it's really great that the arts survived through the pandemic and they are coming back, and it's just really exciting to start having those in-person performances again. And the arts are so important, especially with the cuts in the schools. Programs like Exit 82 offers, they offer some alternatives when programs at the schools are being cut. We've had students from High School North perform at their events, and so we just really want to support our local businesses, and that is one way. You can check it out on their website. And then I did want to say thank you to Alex Davidson. He's put us, the township, into a really solid position, and with a lot of forethought and planning for the future. And I just want to say thank you, and you will be sorely missed. And happy birthday to Josh.
Councilman Kopp.
Thank you, Council President. So I'd just like to also thank our CFO, Alex, and best of luck on your next journey. We talked about some great minds tonight, and Alex was definitely one of them in Toms River, and he will be missed, and like I said, best of luck. This Saturday, July 17th, the BID's going to be hosting Summer in the Street Festival on Washington Street. It's going to be an annual festival that's going to have trucks down there, events for the kids, live music, food and drinks. It's a great event for our residents, and I hope to see everybody down there. And I know most of this council will be down there. We look forward to meeting you. That's all.
Very good. Again, Alex, farewell, best wishes, and that's all I have. So I don't recap what everybody else said. At this point, I'll open it up for public comment. Does any member of the public wish to be heard? Yes, sir. If you would, just step up to the mic, state your name and address, please.
Ken Gaugran, that's spelled Gaughran, 1204 Fellowship Court. Really quick, not talking about marijuana tonight. There's actually with a community project, I guess I could say, that, how do I phrase this? Let me restart that. A couple months ago I came and I was talking about how Toms River is known for a few big things, our sports figures, and we were also the site of the Amityville horror movies back in the 70s and 80s. There's a guy there's an author who lives in Manhattan. He's actually written a book about the filming of the movies here. And essentially, he interviewed over 80 Toms River residents, including, he also interviewed Commissioner Vaccari, who was mayor at the time during the second and third movies. And he interviewed Sheriff Mastronardi as well, who at the time was a Dover Township police officer assigned to protect Margot Kidder back in the day. This book is coming out, I think, sometime this fall, but I call it a community project because he had contacted me a couple of years ago about this book, and it really became a community project where we had to start tracking everybody down because every person in Toms River had a piece of the story, and this was 40 years ago. And people had scripts, they had props, they had stuff that they may have been involved in filming, and he was able to track down a good majority of them. And what was awesome about this story as well is it wasn't only the Toms River side of the production. He also got in touch with the stars and the production company side of it. And he recently did an interview with James Brolin, and James Brolin talked about Toms River. So this book is coming out sometime this fall, but we also noticed through all this that how hard it was to track this stuff down, and we've noticed that a lot of Toms River residents had documents, they had a lot of mementos from that time of filming, and they don't know what to do with them. And one of the things, we were talking about the redevelopment tonight, and I know that's far off, but one of the things I think could be possible in the future, and like I said, in the future, is to possibly have I know we have the Historical Society, but possibly a museum or visitor center where we can display those items as well as the other historical figures in town. I mean, like I said, we also have sports figures here as well. I think it would be great in the future if we could be able to, because we had a lot of pride. Like I said, we had the movies, we had the sports figures. If we could get all this stuff into one place, I think it would be beneficial for the town. And not only that, when this going back to the Amityville movies, when this book comes out in the fall, there's going to be a resurgence of interest in that story. So we're probably going to have some visitors this fall. I think there was a lot of that movie was actually filmed in downtown Toms River, this building included. It was actually in the first one. Potentially in the future, maybe getting the local businesses involved, if we could possibly around Halloween time, maybe even do a downtown walk, a little tour of the filming location, just something to consider, because there will be some attention when this book comes out. I'm very excited for it. I think it's been very beneficial for the town, and it's great that all of the locals who were here at the time got to tell their story. They got to tell the story, and there's gonna be stories that, there's ones I haven't even heard of, but it's gonna be good, and just want to get that out there that it is coming in October. I'm sorry, I'm recovering from a sore throat over the weekend. It wasn't COVID, so my voice is a little strained, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you know the name of the book?
Yes. I was going to say for your book club.
The book is, the name of the book is called, it's actually the tagline from the first movie. It's called For God's Sakes, Get Out, the filming of the Amityville horror movies. And it's the author's name is Brian Norton. And he's, I believe he's actually been involved in film production for a while now, and he's been working on this project for about 5 or 8 years now. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other member of the public wish to be heard? Yes, ma'am. If you would, step up to the mic, state your name and address. 5 minutes.
Mary Ann Wallace, 2nd Avenue in Ortley Beach, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Ortley Beach Voters and Taxpayers Association. I would like to say that I was very happy to see that there's an interest in acquiring more open space, and I think we're very much behind the idea of more open space, but I would like to know before this bill gets passed What are the plans for the increase? Mayor Hill, you mentioned Northwest Toms River. I would like to know if any of this money is ever slotted for our side of the town, and and I also would like to know how much money is in the budget now that hasn't been spent. There is a lot of crowding now in Ortley Beach. I mean, we came back strong from Sandy, but we could use a little more open space, and we're still waiting. Not your fault, I know that. I know it's the state, but we're still waiting for our big open space to happen with the surf club. So I think you would be able to get the voters of Ortley Beach behind this increase, small as it is, if we had an idea of how it would also benefit us.
The problem in Ortley is finding parcels that are open. As you know, the largest piece is right now the OCUA property. If that ever comes available, that would be something that the township would consider, because it's a beautiful location right in the middle of your community. We're moving forward on the surf club. My understanding in talking with Anthony was that most of the legal hurdles have been cleared up. I spoke to Mike Fury today, the assistant administrator in Ocean County. Believe it or not, they have to go back 100 years on all the deeds on the properties that we're selling. And the AOC has cut the amount of time that you can spend in the deed room. Most of these are paper. They're not, they're not on digitized. So it's a lot of work. And there was an environmental phase 2 on one parcel that we had, and that's being resolved now. So Mike's going to get back to me in the next day or two with a more elaborate time frame and what we might anticipate. But certainly the OCUA property comes to mind. If that becomes available, they don't need it for pumping stations, so that's certainly something we would keep an eye on. I only mentioned the Northwest because that's where most of the open space is left in town. We've had a heavy impact there with COA housing. I'd say probably 85 to 90% of the affordable housing is located in the northwest section of town. So we certainly want to preserve property out there so that when we get to round 4 of COA, we have preserved land. And we're not going to be hit with another 1,000 units of affordable housing and wonder where we got to put it. Try to wedge it in.
I understand your goal, and I do support open space. I'm not only asking for Ortley Beach, but you mentioned the OCUA property, and that's a sore spot with us, that it's sitting there vacant, and we would love it if Toms River got more behind, somehow put some pressure, or at least created a little bit of a fuss so that at some point, at least a portion of that property could be given over for a park or a community garden, anything that would preserve it in a way that is useful to the community. I know it's not in your hands, but we would love your support on it, and I think it'd be a lot easier to get Ortley taxpayers to vote in support of raising this tax, small as it is. I understand it's very tiny, but I think we need to see that there is an opportunity for us to benefit as well.
I know we've petitioned the OCUA numerous times. I think Maria's had numerous letters the town sent there in support of that, along with your community. You've gone down to meetings. We don't seem to make much headway with them, but it's not for lack of trying, that's for sure.
Keep trying. Thank
We
you.
will.
We will.
You. Thanks very much.
Any other member of the public wish to be heard? Yes, sir.
Earlier, I came up here and I said that I was on my way up.
Repeat your name and address for the
Richard
record, please.
Chulo.
Thank you.
So earlier, I mentioned that I would be on my way up to Jackson to have an entirely different conversation with their council tonight regarding their relationship with the Department of Justice. I reached Whitesville Road and I felt compelled to turn around. I came back here because I think it's important to point out, earlier when I spoke, I asked each of you to articulate your reason why you were voting either yes or no in favor of adopting the zoning regulations that were required as an element of the consent decree. And I heard 6 articulate, well thought out responses as to why you were casting your votes the way that you did. And then I heard a 7th one from Mr. Roderick that pointed his finger at a 4-year-old letter that Mayor Hill either did or didn't author during the heat of a political campaign, but I didn't hear any reasonable justification for a no vote. So I've come back here tonight, and I'm directing the question through the chair, asking Mr. Roderick if he wouldn't mind explaining to the folks that are in this room, other than for political purposes and exploiting a 4-year-old letter, how did it benefit residents of Toms River to vote no tonight on that, on the adoption of the zoning?
That's up to you if you wish to answer or not.
Well, I have a question for you, and if have you
I
ever...
would prefer you
have
answer
you
my
ever
question
worked
first.
Have you ever worked for Mayor Hill? Or one of
Absolutely.
Mayor Hill's campaigns?
Absolutely not.
You didn't work for the 2004?
In 2003, yes.
Oh, you did work for his campaign?
Of course I did.
Okay, because I was trying to gather what your interest was here and in Jackson and all over, and your area of expertise is...
I'm not going to have you turn this around into a quiz.
Your area
me.
of expertise,
I asked
sir, is
you
you
a
don't live
question.
in town, you don't live in Jackson. Where do you live again? I'm sorry.
You can either answer the question or say you don't want
Are
to.
you defending him as well?
I'm not defending him.
Okay, so then-
I don't need
This is-
everybody to
he's
defend me,
questioning
Dan.
me.
I've
He's
asked you
questioning
a
me.
question.
I don't want to answer. I don't want to answer. But you did work for Mayor Hill then?
I volunteered for Mayor Hill back in 2003 when he was
Volunteered,
running.
you never...
Stop interrupting me and let me finish.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, you finish.
Back in 2003, the first time that I met Mayor Hill, I believe he was running with Maria Maruca, Brian Kubiel, Greg McGuckin. 4 people that I believed in.
Did you endorse him for mayor in the Rise Up Ocean County? Did
I
you?
absolutely did.
And now you endorse...
I'm not having a
reducing the-
political conversation with you.
You are.
Dan.
You came back here. You're
I've
on your way to
asked-
Jackson. You came back to have a conversation with
I've
me.
asked you for a coherent answer why you
work
voted
for the
no.
mayor.
How
You
it-
work for the mayor. Let him hire somebody else.
Please address it, through the chair. Obviously, he refuses to answer, wants to get into a debate, which
It's
is...
a direct question.
And he doesn't
I think
choose
I
to answer it,
articulated
so-
my answers pretty well. I've been very consistent on the issue. Mayor Hill has not been consistent. Neither have you, sir. So I'm through. I've explained my position.
You didn't
And frankly,
answer
you're
the
not a
question.
taxpayer in this
Question
community.
was-
You have absolutely no reason to be here other than the fact that you do what he tells you to do.
You're out of your mind.
That's it.
Literally,
That's
you have-
basically it.
You have
He,
lost your
McGuckin,
mind.
who you just said you worked for before, who you've endorsed before.
18 years ago,
Okay.
I knocked on doors to help 4 people. who
You
I
didn't
believed
endorse
in.
him in 2019 when that letter
I
went out?
endorsed him, given the alternative,
You did.
Dan,
you
which
did.
was you.
You endorsed him, and you said you were against all of this zoning changing, and now you're running around to places telling them they should change their zoning. Seems very odd to me, sir.
And you're not going to
It
twist
seems-
my words.
No, I'm
around
not
the way
twisting
that
it.
you
It's
do
just
to
odd.
Everybody else in this room.
It's odd.
Council
It's
President.
odd that you
I have a
dedicate your
question
time
on the
to this.
floor. I've asked Mr. Roderick to articulate his reason how it benefited residents of Toms River to vote no on adopting the zoning changes that would bring us into compliance with a consent decree. And I haven't gotten an answer to that question. I would like that answer.
And
And
I
then I'll
think-
be happy to explain why I'm involved and why I'm interested.
As much as we would like a direct answer, we could wait here till the cows come home. You're not going to get one from Council Roderick. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever.
So if we give
So-
him one last opportunity to explain why that no vote benefited the folks of Toms River, you don't want to give a direct answer on the
I'd like
question?
to give you one more opportunity to explain why it is that you're here.
Dan,
What-
again,
what is your concern with Toms River, other than the fact that you've been on the payroll for the mayor in the past?
I'm not
What
on the
is
payroll
your
for the mayor.
role here?
That is a
sir?
ridiculous
What is your
allegation.
role here?
You
What is
know-
your role? What is your role in Jackson? What is your role?
Can I answer his question?
No, because 5 minutes are up,
Say-
unless,
say
of
by-
course,
say
he wants
by
to
the bell,
extend it again
and,
for you,
all right, Councilor
which would
Roderick, the
further
conversation's over.
demonstrate, that you work for them.
I don't.
If you want to
listen,
extend it
I'm
for him, you
sorry.
like to extend
I
usually
refuse
for
to
him. Why don't you
accept that.
extend the time?
I do not
Kevin?
work for
We're
anybody in
good.
this room. I receive no
You
compensation.
just
Yes,
admitted that
public
you
comment.
have.
Mr.
I
Cielo?
volunteered 18 years
You've
ago.
built. You've built.
18
You've
years
built.
ago. And yes, given the opportunity to
Bill,
endorse
Bill.
that man or
Mr.
you,
Ciullo.
Mayor.
Failed, and you've switched your position. You were anti-development, you were anti-reducing acreage requirements for houses of worship. Now, all of a sudden, you're in favor, and you're running around to different towns, and you're no expert, sir. What is your field of expertise?
I'll accept
What
the
do
motion
you do,
to
sir?
adjourn
Sir,
to
what do you do for a
executive
living?
Motion to
What do you
adjourn.
do for a living?
Second.
None of your goddamn
Right.
business.
You work for him. Spare me.
Mr.
Spare
Ciullo.
me. You know what?
Mr.
You
Ciullo.
can add that to the lawsuit that I've already filed.
Okay, Mr. Ciullo.
Motion
Mr. Ciullo.
motion to adjourn to
That's a
executive
ridiculous
session.
allegation.
Mr. Ciullo.
Somehow I'm-
There is a motion
Mr.
to
Ciullo.
adjourn to executive
Mr. Ciullo, we're done. Thank you.
We need to close public comment
Public
first.
comment?
Motion to close public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn to executive.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975 permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances to discuss matters requiring confidentiality and/or of a privileged nature, whereas the Township Council is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Toms River and the County of Ocean and the State of New Jersey as follows. The Township Council will now conduct a private executive session. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed and/or acted upon is as follows: matters of personnel, attorney-client privilege, and contract negotiations. The following specific items to be discussed and/or acted upon are as follows: executive session minutes review of June 9th, 2021, personnel issues of the Township Clerk's Office, and real property acquisition update on Surf Club acquisition. It is anticipated that the deliberation conducted in closed session may be disclosed to the public upon the determination of the Township Council that the public interest will no longer be served in such confidentiality. A motion was made by Council Vice President Maruka and seconded by Councilwoman Herrick, with all in favor to go into executive session at 8:27 p.m.
Yeah, well, my grandmother, my aunt, Leadbeater, she was a school teacher. They lived on Coxborough Road. What was her name? I forget.
What year was that?
That was a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
They lived right up Coxborough, right up on Route 9 on the left. That's
Right.
Right there. And my grandfather used to have the gas station on 37 back in the day. But like I said, they need to go there now because they're already working on this place. And Warren, that lives next door, is a dentist. He said they're going to come into the Symphony, and that's how they're going to get to this house. This house is 8,000 square feet. They cannot have a school in a residential, especially that area. I moved there for a reason. I get it.